Hi, everyone. I'm here now with Amy Hagstrom Miller. She's the founder, CEO, and president of Whole Women's Health. And we're going to ask you a few questions. So
Awesome.
first, thanks so much for being here. We're happy you're here with us. And can you tell us a little bit about Whole Women's Health?
Absolutely. So Whole Women's Health is a group of, Whole Women's Health sort of is a management company that runs women's health clinics in 8 different states. And we also run advocacy and community education, sort of culture change programs in the communities we're involved in. And so we provide gynecology services, including abortion services, and we're really committed to eradicating the stigma that surrounds abortion in this country, both by providing stigma-free services where women can count on the dignity and compassion and respect we think people deserve when they have abortion services, and also challenging bad laws and engaging in advocacy and community education and trying to shift the rhetoric around abortion in this country. And so we kind of do both in our organization.
That's great. Thanks, Amy. So one of the things that you're really known for is the Supreme Court case. Because Texas's onerous abortion laws, you brought a lawsuit that ultimately landed in the Supreme Court. Can you tell us a little bit about this experience and what it meant to be both a clinic owner and an advocate?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the most intense things I've ever gone through in my life, which as an abortion provider in Texas is saying something, because our work is pretty intense, on all levels. It's one of those situations where, a law was passed on top of a whole fabric of other laws that were already in place, blocking, access to funding for abortion with delays and invasive ultrasounds and scripts that doctors have to give. All of that was already in place, and then HB2 came in on top of it, even providing even more restrictions and shuttering clinics. And so even though we knew the odds were really against us to be able to win, there was just no question it was the right thing to do, to challenge this bad law. And the lawyers say, oh, it happened so fast. The case was decided in 3 years. From our perspective, it took forever. And kind of what my staff went through and what all of us went through on a daily basis in Texas was really intense. And I think serving as a plaintiff has it's honorable work. Like it's wonderful to be able to sort of speak on behalf of people who are experiencing that undue burden, who don't have access, and who get blocked by laws like this. But also in the interim, we had to close clinics, we had to lay off, wonderful staff who have families of their own, who didn't do anything wrong, just because the state decided, the building we had for 30 years was no longer adequate. People had to lose their jobs. And so really, seeing firsthand how the politics affect people's lives, both our patients and our physicians and our nurses and our staff, was a really intense experience. And, ultimately, we sort of, along the way kind of disconnected ourselves from the outcome. Like we stopped sort of hoping we would win because it made us a little crazy, but really took all the opportunities we could along the way to shift the stigma around abortion and shift the stigma around abortion providers and the people who have abortions. And so really opened the doors of our clinics, welcomed media in, told the stories of our work and of the people we help, really knowing that whether or not we won, we would be able to really shape the narrative and try to shift the culture. And then in the end, to win was like the best thing ever. And I think it wasn't until oral arguments, which was, almost 3 years ago right now in March, where I really started to think, oh, we might win this thing. When I went to the oral arguments and I heard the progressive justices really argue our case for us, kind of chapter and verse, just like cite evidence, and Sotomayor and Kagan and Breyer, and everybody was just like, obviously Ruth Bader Ginsburg as well, but they just had a mastery of the strategy around our case. And I realized, hey, like we might win this thing. And then, to actually win it and then see that our work in Texas immediately affected 11 states beyond Texas's borders, that we were able to stop laws or reverse laws in those states at the same time, was incredibly meaningful, incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, it was extremely powerful to witness. And I also really appreciate how you're both fighting for this access and fighting for abortion to remain accessible, and simultaneously challenging this culture of stigma around it, and using that opportunity to do both. It was a powerful piece to witness.
Thank you.
And so, as you know, the theme of this Speak Out is justice for Jane. It's around a case, the woman named Jane Doe, who's an undocumented minor trying to access abortion in Texas. Can you tell us a little bit about this case and why it's so important?
So we, at Whole Woman's Health has, at this point, we have 4 different clinics in the state of Texas. We're in, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, and McAllen. And so in all of those communities, we work with minors. Texas, has some of the worst restrictions around access to abortion in the country. And we work really closely with Jane's Due Process, and always have, which is a phenomenal organization that really helps young people navigate their way through the regulations that are specifically targeted to them. Both, facilitating going in front of a judge and trying to get judicial bypass, but also really advocating even more around the abortion experience, helping minors pay for ultrasounds, helping them understand what's going to happen, preparing them for the kinds of questions the judge will ask. And oftentimes, and most especially in our McAllen area in the Rio Grande Valley, but also in other places around Texas, even in Fort Worth and San Antonio, some of those minors are, doubly or triply burdened by either having immigration status that puts them at further risk, or being, victims of incest or other parts, of their lives and their family that really put them at double risk. And so we were really honored to participate and to support Jane Doe from the provider side, and able to, support her navigation through the regulations, support the lawyers in some of the questions they had along the way about what would happen, if she gets delayed further, what's going to happen if she can't get a medication abortion and she needs a surgical, and, really trying to navigate some of their prep for the various sort of hearings that they had to go through behind the scenes, but then providing her services, and it was one of the most meaningful things that we were ever able to participate in. It's just, having my staff come in, on a day that we weren't even planning to be open, having the doctor willing to come in on a day that we weren't even planning to be open, in order to serve her and in order to get her the access to the compassionate care that she deserves. I even had the opportunity to communicate with her on the day of her procedure, and just talk to her about how meaningful it was for us to be able to do what I call deliver her into her future. And she was, her life was changed, but I think many people's lives were changed watching this experience, and also just watching how the government could just insert itself and betray someone's confidentiality. I mean, there was a moment there where the Attorney General and the Governor of Texas both shared information that betrayed her confidentiality. That you'll notice I'm not sharing, right? I'm not talking about sort of, anything that she hasn't given me permission to talk about, but also, they shared all this data about that sort of made you kind of know where she might be or what her status could be. And it's just heartbreaking that the administration thinks it can control people's access, and we have a really strong commitment at Whole Women's Health to serve people, and we don't believe any human could be illegal, or that it doesn't matter where you come from, that you deserve access to compassionate, dignified care, no matter your ability to pay, no matter what language you speak, etc. And so the other part that was really moving about her case was how many people really stepped in and helped, made donations such that she didn't have to incur any expenses. And contrary to the media spin, there wasn't any government money, going towards her abortion services. You can't use government money towards abortion services in the state of Texas. People should know that. And so just seeing how strong our allies are, and how great the system works with all of the different parts of the system, the lawyers and the advocates with Jane's Due Process and the providers really kind of coming together around this case. And there are cases we've done this for before her, and unfortunately there will probably be cases after her where we need to push in order to have somebody's rights actually be meaningful and actualized for them as they need them.
Yeah.
So it was super meaningful.
And thanks for sharing sort of that huge community that was involved in sort of supporting and making sure that she could have access to this care. It's powerful to hear. And you said one line of delivering her to her future. So I was going to ask, my final question is, what does abortion access mean in people's lives?
So this is something I think about all the time because I, came into abortion work specifically from a human rights and justice framework, and really seeing that people's access to abortion services, almost whether they actualize it or not, is sort of meaningless, right? Like whether you have an abortion or not, or whether you get pregnant, and you need one, or you thought about it or whatever, is almost irrelevant. The fact that the ability for us to control our fertility exists allows people to dream and allows people to plan for their future in a way that really, takes us a step toward real equality. And so I've come over the years in my work to think of abortion almost as a metaphor for women's autonomy and for self-actualization of people who need to be able to have equality and self-determination for what happens to their lives. So many times, the act of choosing to have an abortion is an act where somebody chooses a course for their life instead of feels like a victim of their circumstances. And so it is a self-determined self-actualization for a lot of people. And to me, that the ability to control our fertility is the key to us actually attaining equality and being able to live lives that are completely fulfilled and have the sort of same hopes and dreams that other people do. So to me, it's almost like it's aspirational. Sorry for the pun, but it is. There is an aspiration that people have, and I think of that. I think it's from Cider House Rules, where the doctor in Cider House Rules says, sometimes I deliver the babies and sometimes I deliver the women. And that's always hit me really hard, because we do deliver women and people who are pregnant into their future. And we help them, take ownership of their bodies and to be able to decide if and when they want to bring life into the world, but also to decide what their contributions to the world are going to be. Some of it might be parenting, some of it may be other things that we're called to do in our lives. And so to me, abortion is like key to that freedom and autonomy. And I think that's what scares people, our opposition. That's the issue that scares people. It's not the actual abortion. It's what abortion means to allow people to have full equality and autonomy. That's the threat to the establishment. And I think it's important for us to realize that and not just think it's all about abortion specifically. It's actually about keeping people in their place.
Yes.
Quote unquote.
Well, thank you so much, Amy, for joining.
You're welcome.
And for really championing access to abortion and in many different ways, but through challenging stigma, through providing care, and through being an incredible champion advocate for us all. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for making this work.